Here with Marc. Some from Shrapnel. Is that the best way to say? Okay, with the Shrapnel team. Just want to say, first of all, shout out to Shrapnel for sponsoring us. Super cool, amazing branding you're going to be seeing on all of the mics, on the backgrounds here, Mercury. So before we get into that, can you talk to us a little bit about yourself? Like, who are you? Want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Marc Mercurio. I'm the Chief Blockchain Officer over at Shrapnel. I was at Microsoft. I was a startup guy. Went to Microsoft. Ended up staying for 18 years, mostly early stage tech. Ended up being their blockchain guy, so launched their blockchain business. We launched like nodes as a service and tokens as a service and a bunch of tools. Did some other stuff in the company after that, and then went to Consensus. And so was basically not MetaMask, worked a lot on the dev tool side of the business, and then got cold called by Shrapnel. We had been looking at ways to diversify revenue when I was at Consensus, and I was looking at gaming, and one of the things came was like, yeah, but these are $100 billion pieces of IP. Like, no one's going to sort of risk going into Web3. But Shrapnel had a bunch of people who'd worked on some of the best AAA IP, everything from Call of Duty and Bioshock and
Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, everything, right? So really great titles. Like, and they were all in on Web3. It wasn't some sort of rug pull or anything like that. They really believed in like empowering creators and players and whatnot. And they just needed a blockchain guy. And so it's a really weird thing for me. We talked. I love the team. They're amazing. And then I signed before I left the parking lot. And so
really?
Ever since, yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. It is very unlike me. But it was one of those things. It's when we sort of chatted, like, all right, these are great people. They have a great idea. They have a great story and great IP. I mean, they're so thoughtful. They've got not just the game figured out, but they have like 2 like seasons of a streaming season, a streaming series, and a movie. Like all that stuff sort of factored out if the title takes off. And so it's just amazing to sort of step in that world. It does make the code reviews or the sprint reviews a little bit harder because we're showing all this great back end stuff that's kind of plumbing. And you have a guy who's created a new grenade that week. It just looks amazing. I was like, can I just go before him? It's really hard to follow that act. So, but it's a lot of fun. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me. And then when we did that, one of the reasons I signed on right away is we said, hey, you know what? We're going to solve a lot of problems. Because if you think about a game, it's got manufacturing and supply chain and commerce and retail and finance, like all these elements that are there. We're going to have to solve a lot of really hard problems. We should take whatever we do and make sure that we can give it to everybody else to go use and have a platform, which is what Mercury is, to be successful. But I'm sure we'll talk about it over the course of the time here. But yeah, the team is fantastic. The location is fantastic. And the game is a lot of fun. So
why do you think that Shrapnel will succeed when so many Web3 games and games in general failed?
Yeah, so I'm happy. That's a great question. If you think about a lot of games, they came from one of 2 directions, right? One is we have people that started like, hey, it's a Web3 game from folks that were really big and successful in DeFi. And they didn't necessarily have the storytelling and the game experience there, right? And so a lot of times what you had novel Web3 mechanics that were put in that were like, hey, we can go do these things that are a little bit interesting, but the games were really fun, right? Or you might be like farming and things like that, but that wasn't necessarily fun and whatnot. Then you had traditional web developers who were going to build things out, and they were trying to focus on the fun, but Web3 is really difficult, right? So a lot of my career is like early stage tech, and so one thing that's consistent regardless of the technology is that early adopters have 2 things: religion and a high threshold for pain, right? It's because it's constantly changing and all the rest of that. But the game developers, they just want to get the outcomes. They want to enable creators to go ahead and be able to make some money off their creations. They want to have players to be able to engage and actually own their stuff and have agency. So they really want the outcomes. But then you have those folks that want the outcomes, but it's like, okay, but before you do that, you have to understand what an ERC is, an EIP is, what ZK is. And the learning curve was so high, it was a bit of a challenge. And so there were some platforms that were out there. And so if like the learning curve was like 90 degrees, they might have taken it to 65, 70 degrees, but it's still super difficult. So the ones that try, like a lot of people just said, I'm not even going to try that. And the ones that tried failed, right? And so that's where we're trying to sort of come in and help folks out. So if you think about, John Norbury, our head of studio, does a great analogy here where it's like, if you think about Mercury and what we're doing with the game, it's like Halo 2 and Xbox Live, right? Like here's a new technology that enables you to do things differently and a great game that shows how you can do that really well. And so we're trying to do that together. And so the key thing is if you look at Shrapnel is a lot of fun. So if you see people playing it, they are, sorry. If you watch people, they have a lot of fun playing it, but they also have a lot of fun watching people play it. right? Because the stakes are real. So it really is kind of the extraction shooter genre is really designed for Web3. Folks are less familiar with that. What you bring into the game is at risk. So if someone shoots you, they can take it. If you find stuff in there, you can take it. But then you have to get to an extraction point and be able to extract, right? And so it's a much more intense game because the stakes are real. It's not like, okay, I died, we'll start over and just do the thing again. It's like, no, these things are real. And you can actually monetize that. You can go ahead and sell them and whatnot. And if you're not a player and you're more of a creator, we have an insignia tool. We can go ahead and create effectively stickers you can put inside of the environment. And so you can sell those in the marketplace and people can bring them in. And our sticker creators or our community is just amazing. I was telling someone earlier today that one of the decals was like a rattlesnake head. And someone figured out if you squish it and you stretch it, it looks like a paintbrush. So you look at some of these things. Someone's done like a scene from The Lion King that's like amazing. You'd want to put on your wall that you're going to be able to put on your gun or other things like that. They've done a whole bunch of different things in like every genre you can imagine. They're constantly blowing us away. So there's a bunch of creativity from our community. There's a bunch of really fun gameplay. And then if you're not either of those folks, you just want something really fun to watch and like competitive, it's good there too. So the early feedback is great, and we're hoping more folks sort of jump in as we do these next set of we call the STX exercises.
No, absolutely. For Shrapnel, would you say that there's a future where it sort of becomes the premier? I mean, I see it as a premier kind of game in Web3, but just a premier game in general. Like, do you think that people are just going to stop thinking of it as a Web3 game at some point and just a game?
Well, and so it's another great question, right? And so the key for us is that there's going to be people that are Web3 folks that care about the tokens in the marketplace and be able to bridge them to other chains and all that stuff. And there's folks that just, I want to play this game because it's really fun, right? And so when you go into the game, we create a wallet for you behind the scenes. And then a lot of things are very similar to your traditional games. And so if it's a fun game, and I think the feedback is it's a fun game.
It is fun. I've played it.
Yeah, there you go. So you can come in and you know, any user that just wants to play a great game can go ahead and do that and be really successful. And then if you're Web3 and you want to go in and you want to understand a lot of the stuff and you want to take the token and do swaps and bridges and everything you want to go do there, you can do that there. We try to meet people in the middle. And so for the nice thing that I get really excited about, because I'm a big believer in Web3, is if you can make this feel very familiar and make it less scary for folks. Because if I think you and I both understand DeFi pretty well, right? But a lot of people don't, and they don't understand that, and it's a bit of a learning curve. But it's like, and so sometimes Web3 can be scary for them, right? It's like, oh, this is a game, and I actually can now own my stuff. I bought like hundreds of dollars worth of skins, and now I'm done with the game. Can I go ahead and sell them to somebody else? Yeah. Like there's a whole bunch of things that you should be able to do that you haven't been able to do before that I think we'll have a lot of fun with. People have a lot of fun with it. And I think it's just going to be a fun game to play in general. And then the elements of it are great. But the fact that Web3 is powering it under the covers is great, but isn't necessarily going to be the reason why you come necessarily. It's the things you can go do that Web3 empowers you to do.
It's right? Like Fortnite and the skins in Fortnite. Like you play Fortnite for the game, but like you enjoy having your custom skin.
Yeah, and so there's a great Fortnite story for you. It's one of the reasons why I'm a big believer in what we're doing. So I had a son, Nicholas, and he was a big Fortnite player, but he wasn't old enough to get his own account, right? So he bought lots of skins. He played on my account. And then he became of age, like, Dad, I'm going to get my account. Can you just transfer those over to me? I'm like, sure. And then it's like, oh, no, I can't do that, right? Because we bought them. We spent hundreds of dollars on these, or thousands of maybe, on these things, but we didn't really own them, right? It's sort of like we were renting them. And so in this case, in our game, like, no, you actually own them. And so that scenario is viable. You can sell them to someone else, which is viable. So it's that brought to sort of the next level.
For these guys like Don, and I met Don in the studio, and these guys who are really legends yourself too in the space, how like it seems like there's a lot of people who are in the like legends in their spheres now entering Web3. Like, why is that? And like how, like when you're at Microsoft and stuff, I don't know if you can talk about this. Was there like a core horde of people who were like really interested in Web3, and you kind of like, what was that like, kind of that transition, or even at Microsoft to kind of bring up Web3?
Yeah, so Web3 at Microsoft started, because I helped sort of get that bootstrap at the company. It started a little bit differently. It definitely wasn't games at that time. It was, and it was actually, for me, it was a life-changing experience because people saw blockchain and like, this has the potential to change the world as much as the internet does, right? And so I was the blockchain lead. And so I got to talk to people in our executive briefing center at the C-level, at the C-suite from every industry. And we worked through a whole bunch of different things that how that would go and work. in every industry. Some of the public stuff is stuff we did with Starbucks and whatnot. And we figured out, and there were some things that we could do to be successful, some things that were sort of inhibitors to that. But what's really interesting is in Shrapnel, like a game is a microverse, right? And so all those industries I talked to, like the patterns I did with Starbucks for supply chain and other folks for manufacturing, those are all going into our game, like all those lessons learned. Because, I joke I'm the largest manufacturer of weapons and cosmetics in Web3, right? Because I literally am minting 50 million NFTs right now.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's a crazy set of things we've got to figure out. But again, a lot of these things we had to look at back at Microsoft, because you got a chain that has so many transactions, right? And you say, okay, well, I need to have... we're going to have this new launch of the STX, and we're going to have these things called fragments. And so fragments, you can sort of collect several of them. You can find them and extract them from the game or buy them from the marketplace, and then bring those together to make a skin. So that means for every skin, I need to have 4 of these things. And then you want to maybe have hundreds of thousands of people that could be able to get these inside of the game. And so now I have to bring hundreds of thousands of each of these things, which is a lot. But then you have to factor in, but then I also have to marketplace where they can buy and sell them, which is also doing transactions. And then you also have a game where people are extracting stuff in and out. And we have some challenges there because when you go into a game, it's at risk. So I can't let you sell it at the same time because some people might try to cheat the system. And so there's, I call it like magic and misdirection we have to do as well, right? With that many transactions, and the chain really can't accommodate all those. You have to figure out like what has to be on the chain right now, what has to be there in a couple minutes, what has to be there like if you want to bridge out or something like that or sell it. And then we do all this traffic cop stuff behind the scenes. But these are sort of like big rock problems we have to solve. The other one is one of our personas is a character called Toby, right? So imagine he's like a 16-year-old from Kansas. And like, so Toby goes into a match and there's 2 streamers, right? And they've got like $100,000 worth of stuff on them each. They shoot each other. They're dead. Toby's like, yay. He goes and steals their stuff, right? And so he manages to extract. He's just gotten $200,000 worth of assets. Toby now goes into the next game. He gets shot in the first 10 seconds, right? So Toby's mom now wakes up to, I need an accountant now because my son has got $200,000 profit and loss. No, not in our game. We figured out how to work that. But there's a whole bunch of like small nuances like that. How do you figure that out? So it's not a problem for people to go do these things that we've sort of nailed down and sort of gone into Mercury. So that you just focus on the fun and just say, okay, I want to go do these things. And behind the scenes, we've figured out how to go do them. And actually not just go do them, but do them in a way that is... I call it like fair and reasonable and super low friction, right? Like you can ask for certain things or do certain things at the wrong time that makes it less fun to go play, for example.
What is Mercury?
Yeah, so Mercury is the brand of so Mercury is the god of commerce and speed and things like that. And so that is the name of the platform we built for Shrapnel that we're making available to other games. And so if you think about, if you want to build a game and some of the problems we've talked about today, there's certain things around content where you want to have like advanced functionality, but you want to also maybe have your assets be able to be brought to any chain. There's a whole bunch of stuff we do there and commerce, everything from, how do you do your own token? How do you handle fees? And we do like payment splits. And so if you and I were to create stickers and Tom were to put that into a skin, like we have algorithms that can make sure that the royalty split gets created for that. So we all get paid out. If we have a map and we have a pay for performance model, we can apply those splits there to make sure that everyone who's an owner in that
I was a huge map creator as like a kid. Like Halo 3 Forge, I would spend like tens of hours, like hundreds of hours building like custom game maps, like all of that stuff.
And so now you can have games that they can actually pay you for the experience and to make sure that you're getting paid for performance or other things that are going on. But there's a lot of stuff there we've got. And then we also have things like quests. And we built like an awards engine. And so you can say at this date and time or on this, like every Monday, the first Monday of the month, look at this set of criteria. And then anyone who qualifies for that, give them these awards. So it's an airdrop engine. It can power a battle pass. It can power like a questing system because we also have a questing system. So we've also built out a lot of these primitives that you could start mixing and matching there. And that's where sort of the Microsoft background comes in, right? It's like, you don't know what people are going to build. Like give them these things, the right like Lego bricks to go build things, and they'll surprise you and do really cool things. So we've got a lot of those baked in. And then on the chain side, we're a free-to-play game. And so if you think about chains, like gas is a big concern, right? So if you think about like an Ethereum or a Polygon or one of those networks, the gas price is variable, right? And so the concern there is like, how do you build a business when if you want to interact with the chain constantly, it becomes problematic because you have a lot of outside forces that can sort of mess with that. And then when you're starting to do games like ours, I talked about when you go into a game, everything's at risk, right? So we have to like do escrow and settlement. So make sure you can't do it, and then we'll settle out at the end. So it's not just that you brought these things out, but like we've got a sort of a more complex situation where if you killed me and someone else, you took my gun and someone else's scope, and now you've put those together, you've basically made a new item, a new composite. And so we have to handle all that stuff going on behind the scenes. So we can handle all that for folks with what we've done on the chain side, but those are all what we call implicit transactions. So if in DeFi you want to go buy this token, you want to go do a swap, you're saying, I want to do, or buy an NFT, it's an explicit action. So, hey, I want to go do this thing. And so then you can charge gas and people get it, right? But in our world, there's a bunch of things the platform does. And so we would pay for that.
Pick up loot off the ground, like, oh, $10 to pick up loot. Yeah, nobody would want to do that.
Yeah. So we'll do that behind the scenes. And so we looked at that and like, well, that doesn't, like, the goal here is that the currency that's used in the game Strap, like the value, if the value were to go up, or even if it just stays constant, there's a cost to us, right? And so all these implicit transactions will give us a cost. And so we worked with our folks our friends at Avalanche, and said, hey, I want to divorce the utility token from the gas token. Because a lot of times you'll have like ETH is both gas and utility, and Matic is both gas and utility. And so that gives me the ability to have this unlimited gas supply, which means I can make things as cheap or as expensive as is appropriate, right? I can charge them fees in my token, my utility token, which is Shrap, which allows us to get a better understanding and control over our cost mechanics. And then we also have the subnet, which is basically a net dedicated just to things related to Shrapnel right now. And so that allows us to make sure that someone doesn't come onto the chain and starts doing some crazy stuff that sort of clogs up the number of transactions per second we have and things like that. So a whole bunch of stuff we've done there. And then with Layer 0, we've worked with them to incorporate bridging. So you can take these assets to any other chain, whether it's the currency or the assets and things like that. So a lot of the nice thing is the experience at Microsoft. We learned there's a bunch of patterns we learned, and we built a lot of things. And so when I came in, same thing with a Consensus. So we came to Shrapnel. It's like, okay, we figured out like all the core mechanics. Let's figure out how we go do the more advanced stuff. And so you'll all see like in the content that Mercury lets you do, it's I call them the IBLs. It's like it's a composable, bundleable, rechargeable, like all the things that you'd want to have if you went and built the game. And so, for the game developers, it removes a bunch of restrictions where before it might have just been an NFT that represented the asset. We can go ahead and do that for them. Now, we chose Avalanche, so there's all that baked in for us. But if you did want to run on like Avalanche C or other networks like a Polygon or ETH or whatnot, we can do sponsored transactions to make sure that the gas gets paid for and things like that. But really, at the end of the day, what Mercury does is say, okay, you want to build a game. There's a bunch of things you need to go figure out. We got you covered. You focus on the game and just interact with users and wallets and those sorts of things.
So for you guys here, why are you guys here at ETH Denver?
So Mercury we've been working on for a while. And this week we've been sort of taking the covers off of it. We've got our new swag. This is the first.
Let's go.
Exactly. So we've been talking with a bunch of partners this week. In some cases, there are folks that provide things that are adjacent to what we're delivering, that are part of the end-to-end experience for being successful in building a game, things like related to marketing or user acquisition, that sort of thing, as well as some partners for adding some really cool new capabilities in new chains and things like that as we go. But it's been a great week. I mean, one of the things that's great about ETH Denver is there's such a it's such an attraction for so many different types of folks that we're able to talk to all our partners that we want to talk to in one place over the course of a week. And then also, shameless plug, we're trying to hire. So
what are you guys hiring for right now?
We've got a lot. So we're looking at, front-end devs or full-stack devs.
This is a place for devs.
Yeah. And so just going around, going to the hack houses and just seeing who we can find. What's nice with the hack houses is that you can see who's like building cool stuff or who's like sort of pushing the envelope for things. But I'll never forget, like when I came to the first ETH Denver I came to, it was just as the mask limit for mask requirements for COVID were lifted here. And there was like the first time anyone had been at a conference for a while. And everyone just really wanted to talk to other devs and talk about the things they were doing. And there were so many great ideas and so many bright people here. It's like, hey, like this is a place we're going to go look for talent. That's a great place to go. And for folks who didn't make it, they can go to shrapnel.com/career, shameless plug. We've got a bunch of roles open for all sorts of stuff. But yeah, this is a great event.
We'll be plugging Shrapnel all the time. I mean, thank you guys again for sponsoring. Literally absolutely epic to work with. Also love just being in Seattle with the Shrapnel team. It's so cool to have like a lot of Web3 companies coming out of Seattle. Like, I don't know, that makes me really happy to see, you know, obviously going to UW, and it hasn't always been a Web3 hub, but it's becoming one, especially with Shrapnel having the home base there and the awesome studio. Absolutely. You can feel the innovation when you're in that studio, and the passion for the game and the ecosystem that's being built there. It's crazy. It's like watching history in the making, and it gives me personally the feeling of like when I played like Halo 3 the first time when I was a kid, and that was like one of my favorite games ever, and it was just like, it's just a certain feeling. It's really hard to describe, but if you're a gamer, you understand where you play something new and you're like, oh wow, like this is a really fun experience. I want to show my friends this. I want to tell my family about this, and I wanted to play more, you know. It was like I left the studio and I was like, damn, like this sucks. Like, why can't I go play this on my Xbox, you know? Like, and that is just such a special, like, unique thing. Like the amount of talent that you guys have really brought together in one studio is like world class. Like, how did you manage to? I mean, they got you to sign in the parking lot. Yeah. Why is there this crazy talent moving into Web3?
Yeah, well, I think what's really interesting with this particular studio, right, is they hired during the pandemics. They hired people they like to work with, and so everyone.
What do you mean by that? Can you explain that?
Yeah, so well, you couldn't bring people in for in-office interviews, right? So you really went out to people that you enjoyed working with and say, hey, like I've got this thing. Would you like to come work with me? And so what they did is they ended up hiring a bunch of people that were really good at what they did, but also really nice. And also, I've heard multiple people in stories like this is like the most supportive place ever, and there's just a ton of trust, right? And so because you've got a lot of people that have been successful in their various things, we just want to build something cool, right? It's like we don't need to thump our chests. We don't need to say like this isn't the thing that this person is going to like be all political about because they want their name on this thing. It's like, no, we think that this can change not just the world of gaming, but just in general. I mean, the thing that gets me really excited is that this is a thing that can bring a lot, like the next million people coming into Web3, this could be the thing that drives them in there.
Billion.
Yeah. Well, and then we've got Mercury, which can bring up so many different games. And it's because like a first-person extraction shooter, I love it. But if you're a casual game player, it may not be for you. And so for Mercury, we're lining up titles that like there's someone who's been super successful in that space. We have someone else that's in like another genre. And so we're really lining stuff up so for the first few customers, it'll be like you can find someone that looks like you or like the game that you want to play. And so like whatever you want to play, you'll be able to play something that has all this Web3 functionality.
Does it all run on Shrap?
It doesn't. But I can't talk more about that just yet.
Okay, that's a good question, though. I mean.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. No, but we've been super thoughtful about it in terms of how do we make sure that it's super successful and looking at everyone from not just our players and creators, but our business partners and the ecosystem community, and then also the influencers that are out there. I mean, at the end of the day, the key thing for us is, and we've been really sort of blessed that we've got people on the chain side are like, hey, we think you guys are going to be successful, so we're going to send more games to you. We have people like in the gaming back ends who are like, hey, you guys are responsible adults and you're going to figure out how to plug this in, and when I don't have to hire the talent to go do that, like I can send folks to you there. And then we have folks on the other side who are building out things in a number of different categories. It's like, oh, all right, you're going to help a bunch of people be more successful more often, which is better for my business. And so like the whole ecosystem that's sort of springing up around this is just great. But the thing is, it is a big responsibility. We were at Consensus last year, the Consensus conference, and there's a friend of mine who's been in Web3 for a long time, and I think people have been looking for a game like this that's much more mainstream and like can bring in more players. And he's like, I think this is a thing. Is this the thing? Because I think it's a thing. Is this the thing? Like, don't screw this up, man. And so like it's one of those things that like as we start releasing more functionality, we just want to make sure that it's great at every step of the way. But now that we're sort of starting to release these things, we're looking back like, oh yeah, we really did build a lot of stuff.
It's insane, the rate of growth.
Yeah.
Like watching it from the outside and now seeing it more from the inside, absolutely insane rate of growth. I'm getting the note that we've gone over time. So just want to say thank you so much for taking this interview. Thank you so much to Shrapnel for sponsoring. Like, we absolutely love what you guys are doing. We're a very young team and we're all gamers. So it's close to our hearts, not just like something that's a product that we wouldn't actually use or something. So it's like we want to see this be successful for our own our own fun too. But yeah, do you want to have any closing thoughts or anything? This will be posted on the ETH Denver X. So anything you want to kind of shout out to ETH Denver or anything? Well,
first of all, ETH Denver, like, thanks for doing this event. It's fantastic. It brings together a bunch of bright people in a whole bunch of different disciplines, all in one place, all sharing ideas and talking about things they can go do together, whether it's creating new things, doing business together and whatnot. So thanks there. And thank you. This has been a lot of fun. See folks in the Extraction Zone. Go to shrapnel.com or go find us in the Epic Games Store. You can download it and get in our next STX, and we'll see you in the Sacrifice Zone.
Awesome. And we'll link all that below, so go ahead and check it out below this video. We'll also be like quoting Shrapnel in every single video that we produce for ETH Denver. So there's going to be a ton of traffic and kind of new people checking out the game who may have not have heard of it. So super excited for that. And thanks for coming in, Marc.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Cheers.